Now, from the station on your side, this is Wavy News 10.
The big story tonight at 6, folks in Hampton Roads and across the nation are reacting to the not guilty verdict in the George Zimmerman trial. Protesters hit the streets in many cities overnight, and closer to home, protesters hit the airwaves to talk about the case. A Florida jury found George Zimmerman not guilty in the shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, but the court of public opinion wasn't happy to hear the jury's decision.
Off the sidewalk, into the streets!
Protesters gathered outside the nation's capital right after the verdict was read. More and more people joined in as police started to monitor that crowd. The demonstrators chanted and marched, but remained peaceful. Members of Trayvon Martin's family talked about the verdict today after church services in South Florida. They said they're disappointed and they're heartbroken over this, but they also said people across the country should channel their own anger and disappointment in positive ways.
My heart is heavy. I also feel that I'm very proud of the Trayvon Martin movement. All tragedies are converted to a good and positive nature.
We don't want this to happen to anyone else again. There's no reason for this to happen to any other families. No one should have to go through this.
George Zimmerman's brother Robert spoke to reporters today. He said the family is upset with the way the media handled the case and the trial.
A red flag has to go up right away, especially after a case like this, where two very crafty attorneys got away with fabricating a completely scripted narrative and selling it to the American people through the media.
Back at home in Hampton Roads, at least one group that supports Trayvon Martin is planning to protest later tonight. This as local activists took to the airwaves to share their reaction to the not guilty verdict. 10 Your Side's Lauren Compton is live in Portsmouth, where a demonstration will start in the next hour. Lauren.
And about 100 people have RSVP'd to come out to this respect walk for Trayvon Martin. It is scheduled to be here at 7 o'clock at I.C. Norcom High School. And earlier, as you mentioned today, the debate over the George Zimmerman verdict took to the airwaves in a local Christian radio station here. Host Elder Carlos Howard and a community advocate, Michael Muhammad, discussed their feelings on the verdict and how it's touching people here in Hampton Roads. It was a very lively discussion on everything from the verdict to race relations in the country, as we know has really been brought to the surface because of this case. And there are a lot of people who are disappointed and hurt by the non-guilty verdict. But Muhammad says that there is something positive that can come from this verdict.
No, we're not shocked. We're not astonished by the verdict, but I am very happy to see that there is an awakening in the conscience of this generation of people.
And we've seen that so much on social media and some of the demonstrations we've seen all around the country, young people banding together and really speaking out about how they feel about this verdict. And tonight, more than 100 people are expected to come here to I.C. Norcom and do just that out of respect for Trayvon Martin's family. Again, it's supposed to start here at 7 o'clock at I.C. Norcom High School. We'll have more on that part of the story coming up tonight at 6:30. Reporting live in Portsmouth, Lauren Compton, 10 on your side.
And we saw protests all across the country. These are pictures coming out of New York tonight. This is a live picture where a Trayvon Martin rally is already in progress. So this just one example of what we saw across the country throughout the day. And again, we're expecting one here tonight in Portsmouth. A lot of you turned to social media to talk about and rant about last night's verdict. Jose wrote, "Justice was done. Hats off to the courageous women on the jury who refused to be intimidated by political pressures and threats." But Jill is not happy with the outcome. She wrote, "If Zimmerman had just watched and not attempted to take matters into his own hands, that boy would still be alive. I do not think the verdict is good by any means. He should have gotten manslaughter at the least." And LaMarcus says, "I'm not mad that Zimmerman was found not guilty, and I wouldn't be happy if he got jail time. I do feel that this country was a long way to go with our justice system." Our coverage of the Zimmerman verdict doesn't end here. Stay tuned to Wavy News 10 at 6. In a few minutes, we'll have more reaction to the not guilty verdict. New information on yesterday's deadly accident in York County. Police say 24-year-old Aziel Nunnally of Hampton was in the driver's seat when he crashed on Hampton Highway early yesterday morning. He and one of his passengers, 25-year-old Christopher Belger, died when the car ran off the road and hit several trees. It happened a little before 3 on Route 134. Crews took another passenger, Norfolk's Juan Zaval Alcaraz, to the hospital. He's expected to be okay. Police tell us alcohol and speed both played a factor in the crash. Police are still looking for the suspect who shot a man in Portsmouth last night. It happened just after 7 on Channing Avenue in the Craddock section of the city. Witnesses say the man was originally in this vehicle, but when someone shot him in the chest, the car swerved into a tree. Police say the victim was able to get himself out of the car, but when he collapsed, neighbors called 911. Coming up next, cute puppies up for adoption. You may recognize some of them from one of our sadder stories. You can see their happy ending after the break.
Plus, it has been a hot Sunday. The high temperature today at the Norfolk International Airport, 88 degrees. That is our average high temperature this time of year. Still well below that record of 101. And all of that rain we saw last week has put us above the average. So we're about a ½ inch above the average for the year. It will get even hotter as we head into the upcoming work week. Your full forecast coming up.
A used car dealership hosted a pet adoption event today in Virginia Beach. You heard of certified pre-owned vehicles? Well, this event was affectionately called Certified Used Pets. The animals came from SPCAs and humane societies across our area, including Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and the Peninsula. Some animals got more attention than others. Remember, some of the dogs were handed out illegally in the parking lot of the Virginia Beach SPCA. They are still looking for forever homes.
We live in a community where we want all the animals to be adopted, and so for that to happen, people have to choose to come to a shelter to adopt, and that's why we brought the shelters to them today.
Event organizers say one way to guarantee no-kill shelters in our area is to find new homes for as many pets as possible. Adoption prices were reduced at today's event. Next, we know the verdict was not guilty, so what's next for George Zimmerman? The answer after the break. Thousands across the country took to the streets after a Florida jury found George Zimmerman not guilty. We'll take you live to some different rallies. This one is in Boston, where it looks like hundreds of people have gathered in support of Trayvon Martin. This looks like a peaceful rally. That is what the Martin family has asked for. But nonetheless, across the country, many people turning out. Here's a live look at a similar rally in Charlotte. Not as many people there, more spread out and even more peaceful. And we have heard some reports of more destructive crowds, but again, everyone seeming to keep with the Martin family's wishes today as they gather in support of Trayvon Martin. There are still questions and controversy surrounding the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, and 10 on Your Side's Jay Gray has followed this story since he was killed. And though the legal proceedings ended tonight, or seem to, there's still more to come.
More than 2 weeks of testimony.
Object marker number 8.
And evidence came to a close with these words from the clerk of court.
We, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
Immediate relief for George Zimmerman, his family and friends.
Nationwide protest!
Instant frustration for those who say justice was not served.
The system has failed us because it shows that this is a continuation of racial oppression.
While the lawyers began to break down the decision.
George Zimmerman was never guilty of anything except protecting himself in self-defense. I'm glad that the jury saw it that way.
This case has never been about race, nor has it ever been about the right to bear arms, not in the sense of proving this as a criminal case. But Trayvon Martin was profiled.
We've yet to see or hear publicly, other than social media, from Martin's parents or George Zimmerman since the verdict was read. But clearly, the issues of race and fairness still linger.
Solidarity for Trayvon!
The courthouse in Sanford was locked down Sunday. Still, a handful of protesters gathered along the roadway outside. Their message echoed in Chicago and New York, a sign for the Martin family that Trayvon did not die in vain.
This has definitely been a tragedy, but coming from this tragedy has been the movement, which we are, and we would love it to be more awareness. And now it's not just a few people in Stanford that know about it, but it's everyone.
Some suggest there should be civil action following the not guilty verdict, something Zimmerman's legal team says they will vigorously defend.
This verdict still has nothing to do with civil rights. Civil rights needs to be talked about, but not in the context of the George Zimmerman verdict.
In a statement today, the U.S. Department of Justice said its investigation into Trayvon Martin's death will continue.
Federal prosecutors say they will review evidence and testimony from the criminal trial here before determining if they'll move forward with their case. Outside the Seminole County Courthouse, Jay Gray, 10 on Your Side.
We have special coverage of the case on wavy.com. There you'll find the link under continuing coverage on the homepage. That includes an interactive timeline of the big developments in the case and a photo slideshow of how the nation reacted. There's also a live Twitter feed so you can see what your neighbors in Hampton Roads and also people around the country are saying. About 10,000 Virginians lost power last night because of a snake. Dominion Virginia Power says the reptile crawled into a substation in Northern Virginia just after 11. Customers in Arlington, Alexandria, and Fairfax County were affected, and crews got the power fully restored this morning.
Now, your Super Doppler 10 forecast with meteorologist Tiffany Savona.
Good thing that power was back on because it was a hot one out there today. The heat index felt much hotter than the temperatures, and you said there's more on the way.
Right, that's right. You're definitely going to need that AC, especially in the evenings. You know,